Welcome to today's tour at the National Old Line Building. My name is Mason Toms, and I work at the Arkansas Historic Preservation Program, which is a division of the Department of Arkansas Heritage. Today's tour is worth 1 hour of HSW continuing education credit through the American Institute of Architects. If you're interested in that, please come see me afterwards. And one quick note, next month's tour has been moved from the Matthews Story House to the Lamar Porterfield at 3200 West 7th in Little Rock. A tree fell on their house during the windstorms, and so we're not going to be able to have it there. But it should, after that, everything should be on schedule. Now on with today's program. Originally constructed in 1954, the National Old Line Insurance Company building by Yandell Johnson is regarded as the largest and one of the best examples of international style architecture in the state. Though built as a private office building, it is now home to a series of state offices and is sometimes referred to as the 501 building, due to its address at 501 Woodland. This area was originally outside the town of Little Rock when it was platted in 1821, and at the time the city roughly ended somewhere around State Street. However, by 1835, when Little Rock became an official city, this Woodlane was the western edge of the city. Even though this was part of the city, there was really not much development here for many years. When the old state penitentiary was constructed just across the street where the Capitol is now in 1842, there were only a few houses scattered on this entire side of Little Rock. It wasn't until the late 1880s that any real development occurred. The 1897 Sanborn Fire Insurance map, which extended this far for the first time in 1897, included this area, showed a variety of houses of various sizes, some very small shotgun houses and larger two-story homes. The half block that the National Old Line Insurance Company building occupies had 5 houses on it, with an additional 7 houses along the eastern half of the block on Victory Street, which is now taken up by the Victory Building. You'd think that being located right across the street from the state penitentiary building would not really make this that desirable, but because the city was expanding so rapidly at the time, pretty much anywhere that was buildable that you didn't have to drain a swamp became somewhere that houses went. The status for the area kind of got a boost in 1899 when the Arkansas State Legislature approved the demolition of the state penitentiary building and construction of a new Capitol building, which was completed in 1915. However, the Capitol building didn't seem to make this part of the block any more desirable. In fact, the number of buildings on the block never grew beyond the houses that were present in the 1897 map. By 1939, this half of the block had only 4 houses on it, had lost one of them. Conversely, the house on the Victory Street side, there were only 4 buildings total. The 7 houses were gone, and there were 3 houses and a duplex. The makeup really didn't change between 1939 and 1950, with the exception of a Masonic Lodge Hall being built on the corner of Victory and Capitol, the southwest corner of it. But by 1951, when the National Old Line Insurance Company bought this property, there were only 2 houses out of the original 5 still standing. Those 2 were demolished in 1952 to make way for the new building. As a fun aside, Woodlane Drive has actually gone through some name changes over the years. Originally it was called Cove Street because the northern end of it ended at the Rose Bayou, or Rose Cove, what's now also called Rose Creek or Capitol Drain. In 1929, the street was renamed Woodlane, 2 words, in honor of Arkansas Supreme Court Justice Carroll D. Wood, who served from 1893 to 1929 after 7 years as circuit court judge. However, at some point between 1939 and 1950, a cartographer mistakenly wrote Woodlane, 1 word, on the maps, and it just kind of stayed that way ever since. The National Old Line Insurance Company was founded on March 12, 1962. No, 1926, sorry. And was one of the first occupants of the newly completed Donaghy Building at the corner of Main and 7th in downtown Little Rock. The company was born out of the idea that a local Arkansas-based insurance company could and would better understand the needs of Arkansas families and better be able to service them. The National Old Line Insurance was limited to an issue of only 2,000 policies when it was first created, to ensure that it had a stable foundation and didn't expand beyond its means too quickly. The insurance field at the time was a very conservative one. In fact, as the later president remarked, to call an insurance company forward-thinking in 1926 was almost an insult. W.F. Alt was the founder and first president of the company, and he described the company as conservative enough to be safe, yet progressive enough to be successful. This statement seemed to be true as the company quickly grew and became one of the largest life insurers in the state in only 15 months. The growth allowed the company to expand beyond Arkansas and into Mississippi by 1929. However, the company's success was not immune to the effects of the Great Depression. Due to the company's conservative practices, they were able to weather the years of meager profits when many other insurers went under. Much of this was due to one salesman, William E. Darby. From 1930 to 1935, Darby was the sole producer of business for the company and managed to sell enough policies during the height of the Depression to keep the company afloat. As a reward for his hard work, Darby was promoted to president of the National Old Line Insurance Company in 1945. By the time Darby took over leadership, the company had already expanded into Louisiana and Alabama, giving them a 4-state coverage. Due to the growth, they needed more space, so in 1946, the National Old Line Insurance Company moved out of the Donaghy building and into the historic Solomon Gans house at 1010 West 3rd Street. It's the big stone Romanesque house on 3rd Street that you've probably seen. The following decade was one of even greater growth for the company. The total value of insurance policies held by the company grew from $11 million in 1945 to $100 million by 1953. The operating territory grew to cover 8 states. Sales agents grew from 4 to 265, and the office staff grew from 7 to 73. This enormous growth required even more space, which led Darby to the conclusion that they needed a building of their own that also projected the reliability and progressive ideals of the company. The result was the modernist structure we have today. In 1960, the National Old Line Insurance Company merged with National Equity Life Insurance Company. The result of this union was a 30-state coverage and over $500 million in insurance policy value. By 1961, the company had more than 400 agents and an office staff of 200. This sudden growth catapulted the company to the top 10% of American life insurance companies in the entire country. The company continued to prosper in the coming years, and they achieved their first $1 billion in insurance policies in January of 1969, their second billion in 1971, and their third billion in 1975, just in time for their golden anniversary. The size and success of the company made it a force to be reckoned with in the insurance world, which led to them being bought out by the international insurance company INA in 1982. A year later, INA and another international insurance powerhouse, AGO, merged to create Egon Insurance Company, and National Old Line Insurance was finally dissolved. Egon Insurance Company continued to own the building and had offices here until 1997, when the building was sold to the Arkansas State Teachers Retirement System as an investment property. A few years later, the Arkansas Building Authority purchased the building and moved their offices into it. This agency, now part of the Department of Finance and Administration, oversees the maintenance and care of most state-owned properties. The Arkansas Building Authority, now Division of Building, still has their offices in the building and rents out most of the building to other state agencies. The architect for the National Old Line Insurance Building, as I said, was Yindel Johnson. Born Joseph Yindel Johnson, he was from St. Louis and was born on October 1st, 1911, to parents Joseph Yindel and Bertha Johnson. He graduated from high school in 1928, decided to stay local for college, enrolling in the architecture program at Washington University in St. Louis. It was during his college years that he met his wife, Mary Pemkin, who was also a fellow architecture student. They were married in 1931, and 2 years later, they both graduated with their bachelor's degree in architecture. In 1934, Johnson completed his master's degree in architecture, also from Washington University. In 1936, Johnson received the Harrison Steedman Traveling Fellowship to study affordable housing in Europe. However, he really used the trip just to tour the works of modernist fathers. The works of very well-known architects such as Le Corbusier, Walter Gropius, Mies van der Rohe, and Alvarado. After his return, Johnson went to work for the National Park Service to design structures for the Federal Recreation Demonstration Area at Cooper River, Missouri. Around 1937, Johnson moved to Jonesboro, Arkansas to partner with the esteemed architect Elmer A. Stuck, who designed the Craighead County Courthouse. And they created the firm of Stuck and Johnson. But the partnership was short-lived, and in 1939 he left the firm and took up a job at the Federal Housing Administration until 1942 when the U.S. entered the war. During the war, Johnson served in the U.S. Navy as a photo interpreter in the Solomon Islands. After the war concluded and he left the service, he returned to Little Rock and started up private practice with his wife, which lasted for 21 years. From 1946 to 1967, Johnson designed over at least 385 buildings in Arkansas from his office in a renovated house at 1889 house at 113 East 9th Street, which was demolished in 2016. Sorry.
Sorry. Radio.
Oops.
Bluetooth on zero.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
That's weird.
I like have a timer or
All right,
something.
now we're back. The bulk of Johnson's work was actually comprised of residences, including 3 houses for himself and 2 large subdivision projects, Meadow Cliffs here in Little Rock and Miramar in Pine Bluff. However, he also designed a number of commercial buildings, a few churches, a couple clinics, and at least 1 fire station. In fact, he designed another building for an insurance company, the Murdoch Acceptance Company, in 1951, and it's located just around the corner and down the street at 6th and Cross, if you go that way. Another Johnson design was the Rogers Wicker Clinic, which stood at the corner of 7th and MLK, just down the street here, where the Department of Finance and Administration's parking lot is currently located. Nevertheless, it was his design for the National Old Line Insurance Company that was his most well-known and influential design. Johnson's relationship with the National Old Line Insurance Company began in 1946 when he designed the first of 2 additions to the rear of the Solomon Gans house at 1010 West 3rd. In 1951, the company once again found itself out of room and decided to construct a new building for its rapidly expanding operations. Then President William E. Garvey chose Johnson as the architect of the project because of his existing relationship. The new building for the company was completed in 1954, but by 1961 the company was in need of spacing. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but this is actually what the original building looked like when it was completed in 1954. And then by 1961 the company was in need of space again, and in addition to the building was completed in 1965 to complete what you see today. In 1967, Johnson was named a Fellow of the American Institute of Architects. That same year, he chose to close his private practice and went to work for the prestigious firm of Donacchio, Cromwell, Carter, and Nealon Incorporated, now known as the Cromwell firm. He would stay there until 1970 when he would move over to another prominent Little Rock firm, Earhart, Ackerbaum, Ralph Blass, and Chilcote, where he stayed until his final retirement in 1978. Johnson passed away in 2000 at age 89, but left behind a very rich architectural legacy and an incredibly well-curated collection at the Butler Center if you're interested in more about it. The architecture of this building, though, is kind of what we're on here. As I mentioned, the National Old Line Insurance Company building is an example of international style architecture. The name international style is derived from the idea that an international style building could be built anywhere in the world and still be functional and comfortable for its inhabitants. The name entered popular consciousness when Philip Johnson and Henry Russell Hitchcock created an exhibition in 1932 at the Museum of Modern Art in New York with the title International Style. The exhibition included photos and drawings of modern buildings from 15 countries, including the U.S., that exemplified the movement. The exhibition was an effort to raise awareness and increase popularity of the new forms of architecture. The National Old Line building is a picture-perfect example of international style architecture, which was characterized by box-like structures with little or no ornament, flat roofs, ribbon windows, which is what these are called, when they kind of run in a ribbon around the building, and cantilevered sunshades or awnings. You can see above me here. There's also a general smoothness to international style exteriors and an overall horizontal feel to the buildings. They always feel kind of wide. This was done as an intentional contrast to the previous dominant style Art Deco. Johnson said that the horizontality of the building achieved by the Rubin windows would also help the building look shorter and so not be as obtrusive to the area. The building is clad in Alabama limestone, which was chosen to complement the Arkansas and Indiana limestone used on the Arkansas Capitol building. The international style is also the most common form of mid-century modern architecture due to its reliance on mid-century mass-produced modular wall systems, which were often cheaper to build. And this building, in an article that Johnson wrote in 1998 for the Pulaski County Historical Review, he talks about how, if you notice, all of the lines of the stone and the windows all line up together. It was a pre-cut system, so that the building was easier to assemble and quicker to build, hence saving money. However, Johnson did not really think that his building was designed in the international style. As he said, "To me, there is less of the lessness of the international style, and I prefer just to call it an example of the modern style." However, the building was not designed to fit into any style category. It happened in its day. It was one example of what one architect thought was a solution to a client's particular needs. Buildings are built with materials and technologies available at the time, and by architects who have accumulated their ideas and design philosophies from all that they have been taught, observed, and concluded up to the time the building is designed. With our training and experience, we hope that the result will be pleasing to observers and occupants. Johnson's statements were actually pretty common among modernist architects at the time, because modern architecture was a rebellion against all of the historicized and revivalist styles of the first half of the 20th century. This is why many architects from that period regarded style as a bad word, and generally resisted any attempt to group mid-century modern architecture into stylistic categories. As mentioned earlier, the building you see today is a product of two separate building phases. The initial building, completed in 1954, was roughly half of what you see, and included, as you can see in the rendering here, included only the lower two floors of the center section and this northern tower. This northern tower also features a penthouse apartment on the 6th floor, and the only known example of a smoke-proof tower in the state, which is this tower that you see right beside me, is the smoke-proof tower. The smoke-proof tower was a fire escape stairwell that can only be accessed from the outside. So you can see the little balconies that go up the side there that look really odd. That's how you get into the stairwell from the inside of the building. You have to come outside to get into it. And the only way you get out of it down here is through this door. There's no direct interior access. That building, the reason why it's probably the only example is because the building code that required it did not exist for very long at all. The second phase of the building was completed in 1965 and included the upper 4 floors of the center section and the southern tower, creating a H shape, going from a T shape to an H shape plan. Both of these phases were actually designed from the beginning. Johnson designed the addition to be done when he designed the original building, because they figured the company would continue to grow, and he wanted the two parts to look as seamless as possible. Aside from the smoke-proof tower, there's a couple other really unique features on the building. One, it was the largest welded steel frame structure in the state when it was completed in 1965. And probably the most bizarre feature of the building is that it had, when it was originally built, it had female urinals in all the ladies' bathrooms. This unique plumbing fixture was created and marketed by the American Standard Company in about 1950. However, they never really caught on, and they were discontinued by 1970. There is one surviving one. It is in the basement women's bathroom, so after the tour is over, when you leave, if you want to go down to the basement level, the women's bathroom on the basement level has one still. And I've been told that they actually have it came with an instructional booklet on how to use it. And they still have a copy of it. The most innovative feature that everyone always comments on it is that it has a foot pedal flush. And it was actually, we think it was an influence by his wife, Mary Pimkin. She was kind of a very big advocate for women's rights and women's equality, and at the time, the female urinal was seen as being far less hassle than women using a toilet, and thus put them on more level footing with men. This entrance isn't really used anymore because of accessibility issues. When we go inside, pay attention to the large marble sign that's original to the building. The original top floors are also still present, as well as a decorative metal grillwork on the entrance to the building authority's office, which when you walk in will be to your left. We're going to use the 2 banks of elevators. There's one right here to your left when you go in, and only one of those goes up. So actually, I'd kind of more suggest that you go to the south end of the building, where there are 2 elevators that go up to the 6th floor. And we'll continue the tour once we get up there. We'll have some people at the elevator banks to help you. And then please gather in the central area of the 6th floor, and I'm going to give a little presentation up there. Raise your hand. Used to work in this building.
What was the question? Before you were born.
Still work in the building. Some people still work in the building. And I'd like to thank Julie Bates, who's over here by the door. She's vice president with the ASU system, for graciously letting us invade her floor. The 6th floor, where we're currently sitting and standing, would have originally been somewhere about 40 feet up in midair when the building was first completed. The thick wall you can see where the artwork is just outside the sitting area was the original end to the upper floor. And there was only a penthouse apartment up here. The apartment included 3 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms, a small kitchen, and a large living room with wet bar. It appears that the penthouse was mainly originally included in the design to lodge and entertain prominent clients when they came to visit, instead of actually being a residence. The first people, it seems, to stay in the penthouse for any prolonged period of time was the Rockefeller family, when Winthrop and his family were displaced from the governor's mansion his first year of being governor in order to do renovations and updates to the house that were sorely needed. Within days of the Rockefellers moving out, 3 female legislators took up residence in the penthouse. Veda Shields of Baxter County, Dorothy Allen of Monroe County, and Bernice Kaiser of Sebastian County lived here until about 1974. When Bernice Kaiser moved out and Representative L.L. Bryan and his wife Evelyn of Polk County moved in. The group remained in the penthouse till the late 70s, and the space more or less formally became vacant, but was still used by inhabitants in the building. Some accounts say that they kind of used it as a break room kind of space. Others say that they would stay here if they had to work long nights in the building. While the apartment was being rented out, this intersection was built when it was being rented out, so there was actually just a door that adjoined the penthouse to the main building. Somewhere around the 1990s, it seems that the 6th floor became vacant altogether, and remained that for quite some time until the ASU system decided to rent it. So in 2013, the ASU system was looking for a location to house their Little Rock offices that would be close to the Capitol. When they toured the empty space, they could see that the space needed a great deal of work due to the prolonged vacancy, but it had great potential. They leased the space and hired the Cromwell firm to renovate the floor to better suit their needs. This included reorganizing the former penthouse apartment into a reception area and offices for the ASU president, executive vice president, and vice president of university relations. Additionally, they changed the long central corridor of offices. So originally this would have been offices along this wall, along this side of it, and that side would have been the secretary stations. And they changed that into 2 conference rooms and a catering kitchen. The renovation was completed about 2014, and since then the ASU system has been gracious enough to host numerous events and functions in the space. I hope you enjoyed today's tour. I'll be around to answer any questions you might have. Be sure to take plenty of pictures. This is some of the best views of Little Rock that you'll get. Also be sure to check out the Honorary Mike Beebe office, which is in the southwest corner of the building on that way, on this floor. Our next scavenging tour, as I mentioned earlier, will be September 7th, and it will be at Lamar Porter Field at 3200 West 7th. We had to move it. And also join us for our next Walks Through History tour and historic downtown Osceola on September 15th. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.